Hey there, this is Teagarden with episode 69 of the Unveiled podcast. Thanks for joining me. So, the last episode that I did was about an essential ingredient in marriage, which was time. We have to spend time with our spouses together in undivided attention to really strengthen and grow the relationship. It is hard to have fun together if you're not spending time together. And I know that's hard in today's environment. But this episode, I wanted to look at yet another, what I think of as an essential ingredient and how it plays out in marriage. So the very first marriage was between Adam and Eve, but it had a third member. The Bible tells us that God walked with Adam and Eve in the Garden of Eden. They were a threesome until the fateful day that they chose to sin against God and then subsequently hide from him. That sweet fellowship they had with God was broken. But God tells us in Ecclesiastes 4:12 that while two are better than one, three is the strongest. That verse says, though one may be overpowered, two can defend themselves. A cord of 3 strands is not quickly broken. Have you ever tried to break a thread? It's not too hard. You can do it. But if you've ever tried to break a rope with your bare hands, you know it doesn't work because there's something about twisting all of those cords together that makes it really strong. And I think that's obviously why God used that metaphor. But besides making our relationship stronger, why is God essential to our marriage? Well, I think there's a lot of reasons. But for one, if you're both following God, then you're automatically going in the same direction, and unity is key. If you're both drawing closer to God individually, then you will naturally be drawing closer to each other as you get closer to God. And of course, that's a win-win-win. I also think, though, that God brings conviction to our hearts when we need it. I don't know about you, but when I'm having a relationship problem with my husband, I generally think it's his fault. And while he may have a part to play in it, so do I. So when I take my problem to God, he helps me see my own sin and brings conviction. And he gives me the courage to forgive my husband and apologize. Without God, we can get stuck waiting on our spouse to apologize to us and maybe take full responsibility. But then there's no reconciliation, and then resentment builds in our hearts. Another thing God can do is give us insight into what's really going on. You ever wonder why your husband got so upset about something? If we go to God and ask, he'll often show us why. Maybe things at work are stressful and he just took it out on you. Or maybe it was the way you said something earlier, he misunderstood or took offense. He can show us things that we can't see. It gives us discernment. One of my favorite reasons for wanting God in our marriage is that God can do what we can't. There's no way I can change another human being. I cannot change my husband, but God can change him. Okay, God can do anything. There was a time when Grant had done something that I felt was really wrong toward me, but he didn't agree that it was wrong, but he did agree to stop doing it. And I had to be satisfied with that. However, a while later, God convicted him that his action had been wrong, and he came and apologized to me. Wow, God handled it in his own timing. And there was another time where I was wishing that Grant would spontaneously say, I love you more. I grew up in a family that was very verbal with love, and Grant's family was not and still isn't. I knew that he loved me, but I thought it would be nice if he just said it unprompted occasionally. So I took it to God, and I asked God for that. And guess what? A few weeks later, he said, I love you, out of the blue. And he continued to do it occasionally for several months. It subsided again, but I knew that God had heard me, and he cared about even the littlest thing in my relationship. So small or a gigantic problem you may have, God can handle it because there's nothing that we can do. We got to leave it in his hands. So is there something in your marriage that's been a problem for a long time and it seems like nothing you've tried has worked? Give it to God. Don't go to God and tell him what you need him to do about it. Simply admit, I don't know what to do, Lord. I'm giving this problem to you. And then sit back and see what he does. Now, you may be saying, I have prayed about a problem with my husband and God hasn't changed him yet. That may be. It's in his timing, and often God needs to do something in us first. So we need to make sure that our hearts are yielded to God's work before we go asking God to change the other person. So I encourage you, invite God into your marriage. Become that threesome. Pray with your husband. It leads to incredible intimacy. Pray for your husband that God would bless him and grow him closer to him. Ask God to create in you, I do this in me, a clean heart and renew a right spirit within me. I ask him to highlight if there's any resentment or unforgiveness that's hiding in my heart. And you can do that too, and then give it over to him. Ask God to help you see your husband through his eyes and to renew your passion for your husband. If you ask anything according to God's will, he will answer it. And God can give you hope when you have none. So God is essential in your marriage for unity, intimacy, conviction, insight, hope, help, cleansing, and doing the impossible. So may God bless you with new eyes for your husband and his for you, and new hearts and a new love. May a miracle be done in your marriage if one is needed. I pray this message, though short, was encouraging. Don't try to do this marriage thing alone. Ask God to be an integral part. If this was helpful, share it with others. I would really appreciate your help with that. Have a great day. Remember, you are loved and you are beautiful and you are enough in Christ. Go in joy and peace.